Good morning and welcome to Words and Music Saturday. We are so looking forward to a wonderful day with you all. It has been such a pleasure these past few days to spend some time with our virtual audience, and we're so excited this morning to welcome you with an eye-opener, Café Brûlot with Sue Strachan and Liz Williams. Before we get into today's session, I did want to talk a little bit about the reason why we're all here. It's not just to celebrate New Orleans arts and artists, although that is a huge part of it. It's also because these 4 days uplift literacy in New Orleans all day long and all year long. So if you're watching this, you may be familiar with One Book, One New Orleans, which is the community literacy and adult outreach program that runs this festival. If you're not, I encourage you to check out onebookonenola.org, and all proceeds from that go to One Book and its year-round community literacy initiatives and free public programming. So it's 4 days of celebrating New Orleans arts and artists to support the city year-round. And in 2018, the One Book selection was New Orleans, a Food Biography by Elizabeth M. Williams. So when we're going to talk about food and drink, there is no better person on the face of this city than Elizabeth M. Williams, otherwise known as Liz. She's the founder of the National Food and Beverage Museum, and she will be in conversation today with Sue Strachan. You have probably read Sue's work if you have picked up NOLA.com or Gambit in the last 10 years. She's a journalist extraordinaire, and she has brought her incredible research powers to this new book, Café Brûlot. She also is a volunteer with One Book, One New Orleans. We love our volunteers, and we're so happy to have talented people like Sue and Liz uplifting literacy all day long. Sue and Liz, welcome.
So happy to be here.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for inviting us to do this this eye opener.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So why don't we just get started, Sue?
Okay.
One of the things I think we should begin with is you telling us, because you are now the expert. Please tell us, what is Café Brûlot?
That's very. I'm very flattered you call me an expert, but I think it's very hard to say you're being an expert about New Orleans or cocktails in general because it's so fluid. And one of the reasons I say that is because when I went in and did this project for this book, it's part of the LSU Press iconic New Orleans cocktail series. Is they gave me a list of New Orleans cocktails, and I picked up Café Brûlot. And in my mind, it is a New Orleans cocktail. The history and the linear is, pretty straightforward. But as we'll discuss later, it really isn't. So this is how I'm introing like the New Orleans version of Café Brûlot is a brandy. Some people use cognac, but you can use brandy. Cinnamon cloves, lemons, oranges, sugar, and we can have a discussion about this, and that's my cat Leon, who's a fan of Café Brûlot. An orange liqueur or a kirschwasser, but I remember you saying that you think it doesn't need any of that because the orange peel, when it's lit on fire with the cloves, the orange juices come in that. Because I remember having a conversation with you. But that is what it is. So it starts with the alcohol mixture and the spice mixture, and then it's lit on fire, and coffee is poured on top. And so it has to be a French dark roast coffee, although Arnold uses coffee and chicory. And it's served in a demi-tasse cup that has to have a handle because it is a hot drink. But I did a really great video at Antoine's with Charles Carter, and I think they're going to put that on the screen right now, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we need to see it.
Hi, I'm Sue Strachan. I'm the writer of the Café Brûlot, just out by LSU Press, and today I'm in the French Quarter at Antoine's, the world famous Antoine's. And we're here today with Charles and Noah to talk about Café Brûlot and have a fabulous demonstration. So let's see the demonstration, Charles.
Yes, ma'am. So we are going to start by doing, this is our Café Brûlot, world famous cocktail here at Antoine's. We're going to start by adding the ingredients. We have cloves, cinnamon sticks, our little sugar, and we'll add lemon zest at the end. We're going to light this on fire and start our Café Brûlot.
Now, some recipes do have orange in it, and then the main ingredients is brandy, which could be a cognac.
Yes, ma'am.
You use cognac.
We do.
And then some recipes have an orange liqueur, and then some of it has Kirschwasser, which this bottle is from, what, the 30s?
This is from 1936.
And this is when FDR was here, right?
This is actually one of the dinners that made this cocktail famous was for President Roosevelt, and this is the Kirschwasser that we served for that dinner, 1936.
1936.
Yes, ma'am.
I
And it's still stored in a special cabinet on the mystery room.
in the mystery room. I love the mystery room. So flaming is a big part of it. And what does flaming do to this?
Well, it opens up the berry liqueur that's in it, the Kirschwasser. It just opens everything up and lightens a little bit of the alcohol content.
Exactly.
This way you're not stumbling out at the end of the meal. And then we're going to add some lemon zest.
And the other thing that's really great about this, you can't catch on camera, is the cloves make it smell like Christmas. It has a very lovely smell to it.
Yes, ma'am. This is definitely a holiday drink.
Yeah. And it's also, like many people do, is skip dessert and just go to this.
No doubt.
It's the perfect end to a meal.
This is dessert and alcohol at the same time. It's perfect. And then we add the main ingredients, a little bit of coffee, just a touch. And when the flame extinguishes, the Café Brûlot is just ready. This is our Café Brûlot Diabolique, the devil's cup.
Now, the great thing about this stand and the cup here is that they were designed by Jules Alcitor, who was the son of founder Antoine Alcitor, who started the restaurant in 1840.
Yes, ma'am. Here we are. Cheers.
Right. Cheers. Thank you.
It makes me want one, whether it's 9 o'clock in the morning or not.
We were talking that before we got on the air, but I don't think I can do that so early in the morning. But now that I saw that, I'm like, I can do a Café Brûlot at 9,
right.
whatever in the morning.
That's right. And, it isn't as boozy as you think it is because you've burned off so much of it. I mean, that burned for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it burns every single drop of alcohol out, but it's not as boozy as it would be if you just added the cognac or brandy to hot coffee and drank it. So
Yeah.
it does kind of make it a little bit less boozy.
And I said in the video, it's a great end to a meal. I think a lot of people use it as dessert. One of my earlier, in the proposal, I said in the early chapters, one of the chapters is going to be what you pair Café Brûlot with, and with what kind of dessert. And you really don't. I mean, when I was thinking about it, when I order it, I don't order dessert with it, and I just drink the Café Brûlot, and it's the perfect end to a meal. It is something that when I have friends in from out of town, I always get it if I'm at an old line restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So where you can get it in New Orleans is Antoine's, which the video was shot at, and fabulous Charles Carter's, the man who is making the drink, is a third generation waiter at Antoine's, which is a very, great New Orleans tradition of a lot of the old line restaurants have career waiters and waitresses or wait staff, and so that is an example. He's one of the family lineage at Antoine's, but other restaurants are Arnaud's, Galatoire's, Commander's Palace, Broussard's. Brennan's used to make it, but they very generously gave me 2 recipes for Brûlot for the book, but they don't make it anymore, which someone pointed out was strange because they do the table side bananas Foster.
Right. Yeah.
So I haven't delved into that. I haven't asked them yet why don't they do Café Brûlot, but who knows? Maybe they'll put it back on the menu. The interesting thing about the Antoine's link is it is the one it's the restaurant that's most linked to the drink. And I didn't put this in the book, but I kind of hinted at it. I think the New Orleans version of what you saw there was probably invented in New Orleans, but it has its roots going far back into Armagnac, France, which I discovered while I was doing research for the book.
I think it was something that was going around. I mean, as a flaming drinks were all the rage at that time. So,
Mhm.
but then you have to invent your own, and I
Mhm.
love using the coffee and chicory, because I think that really, really makes it a New Orleans drink.
It's
And
a it's a different flavor to it. I had time enough. I wrote this during the pandemic, which made it sort of difficult. But it was able to sample the ones at Antoine's and the one at Arnaud's. And Arnaud's uses the coffee and chicory. It's the only one of the old line restaurants, which are all in the French Quarter except for Commander's Palace. They use coffee and chicory, and it makes a difference. It's
it
like a
does.
subtle difference, but it really, really does.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
I did
I
a talk
agree.
last Saturday about how, and this is an obvious thing, but it's nice to remind people that ingredients, when you change everything in and out, do change how the flavors mix with the ingredients. And coffee chicory is a prime example of that.
Well, the other thing is, the even more showy way of making it, where you've got the flame coming
Mhm.
down the orange and lemon peels. Also, that actually affects the flavor. We did see Charles popping the lemon peels, so that you had that wonderful.
I don't recommend that to people doing. He's an expert at doing this.
Yeah,
That I always
yeah.
see him do it. I'm like, you
But
know,
when you lift up the peels in the ladle and let the flame come down, that's actually doing basically the same thing, where you're
mhm.
heating up the oils that are in the peel, so that they make a big difference. My personal favorite is to have coffee and chicory and orange and lemon peel. I want
Oh,
all
wow.
of it.
Well, I'm going to make a recommendation to you is to try it with Kirschwasser. Because
Okay.
again, I have to thank Antoine's profusely because they were so generous with their time with me. Is so they did I did taste testing, obviously not with the coffee and chicory, but like with the different orange liqueurs
Mhm.
and the Kirschwasser, and I prefer the Kirschwasser, to be honest. And that's a cherry liqueur, which is
Right.
really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear, but it's really has a good flavor. I like Kirschwasser myself. Um, so one of the things that I did want to talk about is the fact that even though it's in the cocktail series, it's not officially a cocktail.
Hmm.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. The origin. And you know this. The origin of the word cocktail and cocktail has as many theories. Some people say it was in New Orleans, and David Wondrich, who is a cocktail expert, said it originated over in Europe, where they used to put ginger on it on it in the horse's rear end to perk up their tail, so they would cock their tail, and that evolved into them drinking afterwards and having a cocktail afterwards. Ha ha ha. And he's done a lot of research. Again, it's like the New Orleans origin of it. But I mean, you think it's more of a oh god, I'm forgetting the term. It's not a cocktail. It's a
It's just a drink. I mean, the fact that there are no
yeah.
bitters in it is really the distinction.
Hmm.
The cocktail is spirits, water, bitters, and sugar. And
Hmm.
so if you don't have the bitters, officially, it's not a cocktail.
Yeah.
But I think that when we talk about cocktails in just regular speech, as opposed to cocktail geek speech, that this actually qualifies as a cocktail simply because it has a lot of spirits in it, and you are drinking it in the way you might a cocktail. So,
Hmm.
considering all of that, just like um, a milk punch isn't officially a cocktail, even
Hmm.
though I certainly think it counts as a cocktail. So, but it's not officially what a cocktail is. Um, so, tell me a little bit more too about your personal explorations as you were doing this. I know you were really hamstrung by the fact that it was the pandemic, But did you have fun kind of uncovering lots of things about the
I
Café Brûlot?
really did, and I have to thank you for some of this as well. You took some time out to talk to me, and you were the one who who told me about the the origins of the devil on the side of the cup, which you saw in the video that Jules Alciatar designed that, and on the stand, if you remember this, if people remember the stand,
Mhm.
has the stylized devil holding up that stand, which is unique to Antoine's. Most other places just kind of use what I call a revere bowl, a silver
Uh-huh.
bowl.
Uh-huh.
But I'm gonna let you talk about it because you were the one who just you were telling me about it. It was it's the origins of the devil.
Well, there was a time when everything red, of course, was associated with the devil. And during the time that Goethe was writing, the French writer, he was writing about the devil in Faust. And Faust was always dressed in the clothing of royalty and nobility of the time. And so that's really what you have. So, today we see these little naked people who are the devil with a tail and all that sort of thing. But that wasn't the way the devil was portrayed in plays and operas and in poetry at the time. He was always portrayed as a person dressed in red, uh,
Mm-hmm.
who always had a feather in his cap, because the feathers in your cap were something that people wore in those days. And they were dressed in this kind of suit that represented the nobility. So I just think that's it's fun because there's actually an origin for this, and it's all historical, and you can draw that line, which is really
Mm-hmm.
fun. Yeah.
You can, and I think also you can also look at a lot of the ads from that time that had any sort of devil in it too.
Yes.
So, and it was the same sort of stylized devil, and sort of makes me think that not Jules Alciator, as we all know, if you do some research on him, is a marketing and was a marketing genius.
Yes.
And he, came up with the design of the cups, which is a demi-task glove, but design in the sense of putting the devil on it, the special stands, and naming it. Now Antoine's called it Café Brûlot Diabolique, devilishly burnt coffee. So it added on to the mystique of people like coming there, like, oh, can we Café Brûlot Diabolique
Oh,
and have it in a
it's
special cup?
naughty. It's naughty because it's
It's naughty.
associated with the devil.
It's
Yes.
associated with the devil. And the other interesting thing, I'll go back to the stand with the bowl it's made in, and you'll see that Antoine's one is copper, is it conducts heat better. It's a more even heat. A lot of places do silver, which is fine, but if you can find a vintage set or one that's copper, you're going to have a better overall heat, unique, not unique, just overall heat. It heats
Right.
better.
Right. It's all it's all part of the mystique. I think anytime you set anything on fire at the table, it's
It's
always
true.
exciting.
Well, not everyone does the demonstration with the fire on the table. Antoine's is known for that. The maitre d' at our nodes said we do not do that. I have not seen it recently done at Galatoire's, nor at Broussard's. Again, I was hampered by the pandemic to getting
Right.
places. And Antoine's, since it was the New Orleans origin of the drink, or the restaurant New Orleans origin of the drink, it was the place I sort of aimed for in the beginning, and they really were wonderful. Lisa and Rick Blunt let me in the restaurant, look at old photographs, some of their archives. They're actually putting something together now with Poppy Tooker, who we all know is a great food and drink journalist, and looking forward to a book about Antoine soon. They that building is so old and it has so many rooms, and they had kept stuff in different places. And
Right.
if you've been in their offices, it's a sorry, Rick and Lisa, I've been in your office. It's kind of like it's like, oh, look at this. That's how we found the Sugar Bowl photos in the book. I'm gonna find those really quickly. It turns out, again, doing research online, is that and I had come to Antoine, so they didn't know this. And we started searching through some photos, and we found the photos was that during the mid 20th century, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Okay, that the Sugar Bowl people would bring, the Sugar Bowl committee would bring the two competing coaches to Antoine's the night before for dinner, and they would the coaches would make the Brulot. Obviously, it was just sort of like the posed photo. I could have been on fire. I don't know. And that was a tradition for in the mid 20th century, and it sort of, I guess, it faded out eventually. And you'd have such luminaries, football luminaries, as Bear Bryant is doing that. We have a photo of Bear Bryant making the Café Brûlot. That was one of the fun discoveries from it. Another discovery was the Armagnac link, and that was just by talking to other food writers that we know, like Todd Price, John Demers, Wayne Curtis. They were kind of my link to contacting my friend Kimberly Charles, who owns a wine and liquor marketing company. And she gave me contact with the Armagnac people in France, who got back to me right away and gave me such great information about, it's a tradition. Excuse me, it's a tradition in the Armagnac region. Armagnac is a brandy, if you don't know that. To create each distiller has their own Brlot, which they make after the first distillation, and they put cloves and cinnamon, whatever spices they like in it, light it on fire, ladle it, and sometimes they add coffee afterwards. So I thought that was a real interesting, my cat's creating difficulties. I thought that was an interesting link, that just by talking to a lot of people and pushing a little bit more, and I think it was an offhand comment from Wayne Curtis that got me onto the Armagnac thing, the trail. Otherwise, I would have said, "Oh, this is a New Orleans drink." And the first mention that I found in a book was Lafcadio Hearn. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
And he does strictly a Brulot. No coffees in his Brulot.
Right.
And he uses Kirschwasser. And that was, his book was published like 1884, 1885.
Yeah.
So it was lingering in New Orleans already.
Oh, totally. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, this is the science, because I got very interested in the science of how you could ladle the brandy, the flaming brandy on the tablecloth. It's not that the alcohol, the liquid, is on fire. It volatilizes in the heat, and so you've got this gas of alcohol, sort of the volatilized alcohol that's on fire.
Okay.
So when you pour it on the tablecloth is not what's on fire. It's the sort of layer of volatilized alcohol that's sitting above the tablecloth, and it burns at a lower temperature than things that are carbonized, like tablecloths or wood or something like that. So as long as you don't put too much and it doesn't stay too long, the tablecloth won't catch on fire, which I think is fun.
You know what? I didn't know that. I just learned something new. I just thought it's something with alcohol burns off so quickly that it didn't burn. So thank you for adding that. Now I've learned something new. Thank you. Yeah, and that's always, but I always worry about people, like, I do, qualifier in the book, like, have a fire extinguisher on hand, because someone who's trying these recipes may not put too much alcohol in it.
Right.
And then another tradition I found out more of happening, I found out again in the tail end, and I wish I'd had more time to delve into, was it's such a family tradition for families in New Orleans to make it at home. And Brulot sets are very popular to give as wedding gifts. And, someone, a man at this official at Beauregard Kai's house knew I was making this. He sent me a picture of him making Brulot at Christmas. My friends Carla and Jay make it for the holidays, or her family makes it for the holidays. And, I started, as the pandemic lifted a little bit more in New Orleans, and I started talking to more people in person, and they knew I was doing this book, they were like, "Oh my God, my family makes it. My family makes it. My family makes it." And I would, if there's ever a second edition, I would love to talk a little bit more about the family tradition of making it. And, even the women making it, I found a newspaper article from the 40s about, it being made at the end of a ladies' luncheon by the lady. Now, whether the lady did or not, or that was just sort of, embellished upon, by the reporter, I don't know. But it's definitely been a family tradition as well.
Yeah, and I don't think only men make it. I
Yeah.
definitely think that in a lot of homes, it's made by the women for sure. So, yeah, it's like you have pyromaniac women as well as men,
That
right?
is true. That is true. That is true. So that was those were a couple of things I discovered. Also, a lot of the myths coming up. I always joke about myth busting with this. And you'll read a lot of earlier history, and they'll say Jean Lafitte, the pirate, was the one who invented it or was making it. He's making a pot of coffee out in the swamps or on a ship, and he happens to have brandy, and and it's all possibility. He probably had some brandy on board or some sort of brandy, and they could have made something like that. But really, I think the origins of Brlot start in Armagnac, France, but not Jean Lafitte. But people love to add the pirate sort of atmosphere, or make it seem more exotic to people when they're reading about it. And Jean Lafitte could have had a variation of it. I don't know. He was from
Right.
France or
Sure.
Haiti. He hung out with Dominic Yu, who was another pirate who was from that region of France. Who knows? And as you said, back in that time, well, they're from the early 19th century, but in the late 19th century, you had people doing flaming drinks.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's so many different origins. The one story, myth busting story I do want to tell is, some sources said that it was invented during Prohibition to mask the smell of alcohol. And I was thinking, well, yeah, but you need the alcohol to light it. So
Right. That doesn't really make any sense.
doesn't make sense. I'm sure that was like a bonus during Prohibition, that you could make this drink and you could light it on fire, but it was definitely not originated in the 1930s.
No, that timing is wrong for that. One of the things that I love about Café Brûlot, which makes me think about king cake, and that is
Ooh.
that how today there are king cake vodkas and other drinks with the king cake flavor and stuff, so that the flavor has become something that people try to replicate in things outside of just a king cake. So Café Brûlot was the same way. And at the Moonwall Hotel,
Yeah.
they had a catering company, and they made a soft drink that they called Café Brûlot, but it was Brulo. And it tasted like Café Brûlot. And I just think that that's fun.
I think it's fun too. I mean, I think you were the one who put me onto that. And my question is, did we decide whether or not it had a smidgen of alcohol in it, or it didn't have any alcohol?
We can't know. I mean, we haven't found the actual written recipe, so I don't know whether they just used a brandy extract of some sort, or whether they actually used brandy. So I think it was so cheap that it was unlikely that it had brandy in it, because it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was the a soft drink in the sense of you got it in a bottle, and you didn't spend a lot of money on it. So that's just my thinking because of the cost.
Yeah.
But it was, I just think that that's an interesting idea, that flavor was taken and made into something else. And we're still doing that today, the way we're making king cake of flavor and trying to associate it with other things. But that just shows how popular it was.
It's really popular and still popular. Two things. The interesting thing is, Café Brûlot is a hot drink, and I'd always be curious of how it translated to tasting as a cold drink.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Because when Café Brûlot gets cold, I'm like,
So, and maybe you could heat it. I don't know. I
never
haven't
know.
actually been able to find any descriptions of the soft drink, and so I think that's kind of an interesting question, but I haven't been able to figure that out, because I've had hot Dr. Pepper, I don't know whether you in that kind of a
Oh,
mold.
are you talking about flaming Dr. Pepper shots? No, that's
No,
something different.
no, I'm talking about warming it and having it almost as a mulled drink.
Oh, I've
Uh,
never had that before.
and so I
That's
figured, well,
interesting.
you can warm Dr. Pepper, maybe you can warm this drink, but of course you can't get it now. I've
Mhm.
I've seen actual bottles, but I've never seen one that's still full. Yeah. So we have a question.
Okay.
So can you see the question?
Yes, I do. It's from Candace. Hi, Candace. All right. So research
We need to
process.
read the question.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
What was the research process for this book? What sources did you use, and did anything surprise you? The research process was, since it was the pandemic, it was a lot of it was online. A lot of it, I was at some point I was able to go into libraries and actually read source material, historic New Orleans collection, and in the Williams Research Center, which is a gold mine of research material about New Orleans. If anyone's researching anything that has origins in the city. And then that's a tough process because you have to sort of go through the myths about the drink.
Sure.
You have to be really, really careful because not everything's reliable. And then just ask around, talk to Liz. Liz is a wonderful expert, and we had a great conversation about the drink and cocktails in general. And then we had I talked to, or email was my my godsend, like emailing
Right.
people, emailing the people in Armagnac. And so it's just sort of like a trail down that way of just doing a lot of online research, but asking questions, asking other food and drink writers. David Wondrich responded to me. I was thinking, oh, he's national, he'll never respond to me. He's this big person, and he actually really did. Only one big person did not respond. I'm not going to say who it is. But at that point, it was, I'd gotten enough of the expertise from, other, food and drink experts, such as Liz, Todd Price, John Demers, Wayne Curtis, Poppy. Spoke mostly to the owners at Antoine's, since, again, it was the origin of the New Orleans drink, and actually was able, at that point in the pandemic, you could go there with your mask on and, sample stuff and whatnot. Galatoire's, I talked to Melvin Roderick, who's the manager at Antoine's, and he was the one who allowed me to taste test each of the orange liqueurs. So I got to taste the triple sec, the Grand Marnier, and the orange curacao to get, what is the base flavor, which I think is also an important part of the research process for any drink, is to taste everything separate and together. If it's, I know what sugar tastes like. But for the orange, I tasted Kirschwasser plain. And I tasted the different types of coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker. But I'll do Café Brûlot, obviously. But why we do French roast, a dark French roast versus a regular coffee, and I tasted coffee and chicory. So I think that was a real part of the process. I will say this: don't ever use triple sec in anything. It is garbage. Sorry, it's just it's so bad. It's so bad, and I know I was drinking it just like straight up. Every now and then, if I get margaritas, I ask for Grand Marnier in my margarita. Trust me, it'll change your life of margaritas if you don't like them. I didn't get to taste the Cointreau because I don't think they had it at the time. But I mean, everyone was really generous. Each of the restaurants gave me their recipes for the Café Brûlot, and each one's a little slightly different, and everyone has a slightly different technique, which is interesting as well. It's fun to watch. I watched the three of them being made, the Antoine's, Arnaud's, and Galatoire's. Had not seen it. I still haven't seen it at Commander's or at Broussard's yet. And then Brennan's also, I was talking about Brennan's, they also gave me a recipe for an orange Brulot, which they used a hollowed out orange, and it was a single serving versus, making a big bowl.
Right.
So I thought that was sort of an interesting type of one, and Brennan's did that as, and then Lafcadio Hearn's book had a recipe for that as well. Okay, there's another question in the audience. How much does the drink cost?
From Sarah Woodard.
From Sarah. That is actually a very good question, and I do not know because I was getting it for free for samples. I'm so sorry.
So,
Let's,
might
you know what? Let me see if Antoine has a menu up, and I'll look online while we're talking about something else. But that is a very, very good question.
and at most restaurants, there's a minimum number of people who
Yeah.
need to order it at the table. So that's also an issue too, because nobody really wants to make it for one person. So it's just you can see the process. It's just a lot for one person.
You can do. I've gotten it for two at Galatoire's.
Yeah.
I think they can balance it out for two, but I think it's very hard for a full menu. Thank God for the internet. That's what I always thought when I was doing this book. Like if this was 25 years ago,
Yeah.
it just would have been so much harder. I mean, a lot of phone calls, which is fine, but I don't think I would have found out about the Armagnac stuff, or it would have been a lot harder to get everything confirmed. Okay, Café Brûlot Diabolique. It is $24, and it breaks down to $12 per person, 2 guests minimum.
Oh, well, that's pretty reasonable
Mhm.
if you had a cocktail or if you had some other kind of after dinner drink,
Mhm.
whether it was a cognac or something
About the
else, it would
same.
be at least that much. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, thank you, Antoine's, for having a handy menu online.
Right.
But I think, I was thinking about this because I did a presentation last week and with the Preservation Resource Center. And I think going back to the research process, and I'm a research geek, and I love going to the Williams Research Center. And, I can spend hours and hours and hours in libraries and just researching online. But I want to reemphasize the point of, even though I was stuck during the pandemic writing this, I think it's super important to get out, sample things, talk to other people in the field, talk to people who aren't experts in the field. For example, how to, finding out that, families made this during Christmas. I think sometimes with history books and other books, you get kind of more, and this has got some history in it, like some research history, but I think it's very important to connect all the threads. Not all of it's going to be in the historical documents, because a lot of traditions are just carried down through families, oral traditions and whatnot.
And I think I think that unfortunately that's always true. We have to rely on the written record for things that happened in the past, and things that were ordinary or so common that they weren't commented on usually often don't make it into the written record. And also things that were private that were done at home, unless someone writes about it in a journal or something like that, and then you happen on it, because most journals are not full of indexes or anything that make it easy to find what's in it without reading the whole journal. It does make historical research kind of limited because of what is actually written.
Yeah, I mean, I looked upon the newspaper account of the ladies' luncheon where they would make it, and I used, oh God, what is it? I just a site. I think it's Newsbreak. That's not right. And just Café Brûlot. Keep on typing in Brûlot different. If there's a certain term, type it in different ways. Type in different order in the search engine. Try a different search engine. It'll just use different outlets to find out more research. Because again, I thought Café Brûlot was a New Orleans drink, and it what you serve now is, but it really had earlier origins over in France. So, Jean Lafitte could have been drinking it, who knows, or a variation of it.
But it really makes sense for the origin to be in France, because Jules went to France to study. So he was greatly influenced by what the fashions were in France at the time. And so for him to bring it back to New Orleans makes tons of sense. And that doesn't mean that he shouldn't get credit for making it a New Orleans drink. But we've got Irish coffee. We have all sorts of things that are similar that we can point to. And I think it's really, really true about food, that it is a social invention. So anything to do with food or drink, there's not, very seldom do you find something that's just invented out of whole cloth that nobody else thought of, nobody else put together. It's always based on other kinds of things. And you might credit somebody for making it important, or making it popular or something like that.
Jules, yeah.
Like Jules, yes. But to say that that person literally invented it is probably all you're saying is that this person kind of packaged it differently or something like that. It's and I actually I can tell you this story about talking to a journalist once who kept saying, "But what day was it invented? Who invented it?" And I'm not talking about Café Brûlot, but another food. And I kept saying, there isn't.
Sorry, my cat's falling off the couch. Sorry. Stop it. Sorry.
There isn't a day. There isn't a day you can say it was invented. There's no documentation that it was invented on a given day or anything. It's totally a social invention. And so we just have to live with that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing of it being in Antoine's, I'm vague about the 1880s because, again, you have Lafcadio Hearn's 1884, 1885 book, because it went through different iterations and names through Antoine's. They had, I think, a Cafe Cognac. I mean, and cognac is brandy. So, we don't know. But then there was a point for about 20 years that it wasn't on the menu. Did they still serve it? And some of the overlap with Prohibition as well. So I don't know what was going through the family at the time, the Alciator family at the time, and why they took it off. Maybe Prohibition, maybe there's an accident and they took it off. You don't know.
You just don't know. Yeah.
You really don't know. But I'll go back to, Poppy Tucker is going through like most of their archives. And it'll be interesting what she pulls together about the history. And as you know, New Orleans history is very fluid. There's always new stuff being, unearthed and discovered every day. I want to do a shout out though to Ned Amard, who is a historian. He has this wonderful site. He's an attorney by trade.
Yeah.
And is a awesome historian, and he looked over the history of this. And thank you, Ned, for doing this. I don't know if he's on this now, but he looked over everything, which made me eased my conscience in a way. And he was the one who corrected me about Antoine Alciator, who's Jules' father. And people mostly say that he was born in Marseille, but he did some more research and found documents, and it was his documents that's filed here in New Orleans at the city archive, notarial archives, which is a wealth of like fabulous information. And even if you're not researching, you can totally geek out there. It's documents from the earliest days of New Orleans. But he found this document. It wasn't the will, but it was called something else, where it said he was born in Italy, but he actually moved to Marseille. He did grow up in Marseille. So Alciator, they're originally something, I think it was Alessio, Italy, but he's Marseille. He was born lived in Marseille. He came from Marseille. And that was, Ned, corrected me on that. And that was a great catch.
So, Nice, the city of Nice, was sometimes French and sometimes Italian. And so if you go there, you see all sorts of Italian names, but they're pronounced in a French way. So instead of being Alciatore, you got Alciator, which is
I like how you said that. Well, you're Italian, so.
But I mean, I don't think that that it makes you less French, especially if French is the language you grow up with and all of that sort of thing.
I think that's more in relation, I think, in the sense of where he grew up, and also, making sure the history is, again, it's discovering, things about people every day. I mean, Jules was, Jules, and I think they sent all their all the sons to France to train at one point, but Jules was the one that was the heir apparent and was the one that you read about more. I mean, we don't know what other contributions that Jules, like maybe another Alciator contributed to this. Maybe one of the sisters was the one who came up with the devil idea. We just, back then, women weren't credited of a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So, maybe the sister drew it. We don't,
Yeah.
there's still a lot, believe it or not, there's a lot more to discover on this. And I think, what gets left out a lot of this culinary history is the contributions of women, and what was, back in the 19th century and before that, even the early 20th century. And, even recently, the contributions of women and to the culinary history and cocktail history.
Yeah. Oh, totally. One other thing I want to talk about is Lafcadio Hearn, because he wrote this book as a marketing, tool for himself, because he knew he would sell a lot of books, because this is when the World Exposition was happening in New Orleans. And so, as people still do today, they
We got the book.
okay.
Here we go. Ta-da!
They will buy books, cookbooks, because that's a way to remember the place where they were or where they visited. And that brought the concept of this outside of New Orleans, because it's in his book. And even though it's not exactly the same, the name and all that still makes it be associated with the city.
Yeah, that's a great thing too. And actually, I bought this book at Southern Food and Beverage Museum.
And by the way,
I got to plug your fabulous museum. It's amazing. Everyone who comes to New Orleans need to stop by to learn more about food and drink in the South. And I will be there later today signing books, starting at 2, so we can visit in person.
Yes,
awesome. But yeah, Lafcadio Hearn is, I think, weirdly enough, if I bring up his name to people from outside of New Orleans, they don't really know him, and this is sad because he documented so much of the history of his history of the city. But I think this is a wonderful book of all overall 19th century cooking. I mean, if you are doing any research on food or drink from the 19th century, this is an essential book to look into.
And it's also true that he has sort of puffed up the book by putting in things that are totally not Creole food. And so you're right. It has all kinds of other things that talk about the food everywhere.
I mean, it's fun. It's like old time. He says it's old time sweet pickled cucumbers, cucumber pickles, and whiskey. I mean, there's all sort of delicate cake, velvet cake, diamond bachelors, tipsy cake. I mean, that's just like opening to a random chapter in the book, and it's quite fabulous. But I will say this about this again. I'll say again that in the recipe, there's recipes in this, and the restaurants are very generous in letting me republish them or in this book too, for people to do at home. Each one is very different, and I think some of these home people, the people who make it at home, probably have their own recipes as well.
So, I'm really curious. Did you make the rounds, as I know it was the pandemic, to actually look at the various sets that are sold at some of the jewelry stores and things like that?
I did. I wasn't able to. I made that again. We were talking about the power of the internet. Right. Is that my friend said, "Oh, we got our Brlot set from Adler's." Now Adler's online, you can get the Brlot set, but it's what I call again the Revere bowl, the silver bowl with the ladle. It's very important to have a specific ladle. The ladle needs to have like it's oblong shape, pointed, I guess rounded at 2 ends, so you can pour it, but it needs to have a strainer on it.
Spout, like a spout at both ends. Yeah.
And it has a strainer, so the cloves, the cinnamon, whatever is in that doesn't get into the coffee cup. And that's I think one part you see at Adler's. And then they have Brlot cups But the last time I checked, they have just the white cups and not the devil on the side. Antoine's used to sell them. I don't think they're doing it right now. And they used to have They used to have a partnership with Adler's. Again, I don't think they have it anymore. They may be exploring it. I haven't asked them recently. But Kyle's Antiques in the French Quarter sometimes gets these, ladles. At the time I called, they had a ladle. So some people have to piece together their sets.
Right.
You can also go on Etsy, or eBay. I'm not eBay. Sorry. You can find a bunch of Brlot sets on sale. The Devils or the Demitasse. I mean, if you're in a pinch and a plain Demitasse cup. Lucullus Decorations Lucullus didn't have Brlot cups, but they had the Demitasse cups, which were really neat. And then you can go to Cocktail Kingdom, and Cocktail Kingdom sells two different sets. One is the stand has a waiter on it and black tie, but the other one is a recreation of the Antoine set, which is authorized by Antoine's, and it has the devil, the troubadour. I call it the troubadour devil. And it's copper. And I think, those are the best ways. But I would say, a stroll down Royal Street, which is the known antique street in New Orleans, you could probably find the cups, the glass, the cups are probably the easiest thing to find. The ladles. I think the Brlot bowls would be a lot harder to find.
So it used to be that almost any place that served the Café Brûlot also had their own cups, and D.H. Holmes used to serve it, the department store, and their cups had a joker on them.
I didn't find those in my research. I have to do a second edition now.
And they were white with a black outlined, so they weren't colored, but they were just black and white. There was a black drawing of a joker from a card set,
Oh, neat.
cards. And
Do
so
you have that at the museum?
well, we don't have it on display at the museum, but we have some. Yes.
Okay, cool.
And we have that's the only other one, but I remember going to other restaurants and they would have their own set. They would have whatever they made up to be a design on the cup. And Lubat's
I was going to say Lubat sold them.
Make them. Yeah.
Lubat used to make them, but the ones that I've gone to during my research, I did not make it to, I didn't make it to Commanders or Broussards. Galatoire's, it was a plain white Demitasse cup, a long one. Same thing with Arnaud's, and then Antoine's was the only one with the devil on the side.
Yeah.
Because Lubat, I didn't see that they saw that again on the internet. I didn't see that they were they're being made, and I think if I remember,
Lubat's was bought by another company, so they're they don't exist anymore.
So I think Antoine's. This is way a long time ago, so I'm rethinking a memory that I had a discussion with Rick Blunt that they have to have all their stuff specially made. Yeah. They always have it's all custom made for them. And I know that for one of the elements, maybe it's the stands that they have made in Germany. But again, I'm working off of a memory from like June 2020 here. So, but I do remember they have to have them custom made. When was Lubat bought? Because for some reason I thought it wasn't. It was
several years. It was several years ago.
Yeah,
it was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, but I do think it would be fun if we could find a bunch of them, different cups from different places, and line them up and say, okay, this is from this place, this is from this place. That would be a lot of fun.
That's a great detective story, and I think this is something for our viewers to like. If you find any of these Brlot cups, call Southern Food and Beverage Museum in New Orleans.
Exactly.
Send it to them stat. And now I know if I'm out and about and I see something about that. And I think you can find all this stuff at the real high end Royal Antique stores. And then there's other stores that have just like there's the magazine Antiques Mall on Magazine Street that is jam packed full of stuff.
Right.
That I swear there's probably got to be one in there.
Right.
I mean, there's got to be. They may not even know it because there's so much stuff in there. You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
Right. Well, and even the Antoine's ones changed because they were porcelain ones, and then later they made more just china ones that were more like restaurant wear, that were thicker and not the same.
There's a difference in hue as well. Like they have one like from one of the earliest sets from like the early 20th century. Like, and you can, if you put side by side to a more recent version, yes, there's a difference with the coloring, the size, the quality of the cup. Yeah.
And one version has the devil on both sides, and one only has it on one side. So, there are just many, many variations, even of the Antoine's cup. I'm sure as they reordered it, they did different things. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. And it's, again, going back to the whole thrill about Café Brûlot before we wind up today is, it's just theater. It's fun. It's, wow guests from out of town, or just a fun, if you're out with friends, it's a great wow factor to it. And it smells like Christmas. Everyone, associates it with the holidays.
Yes.
But you can get it year round. But it does the cloves and the cinnamon, and it's festive, and it's it sounds redundant when I say it's a happy drink, but it really is a happy. You can't. You're smiling. You're happy to you're happy to have it being made. You're happy to drink it. It's just a wonderful way to end a meal and celebrate your friends and family.
Absolutely, and of course, Christmas is associated also with the cold outside, and so drinking a hot drink makes a whole lot of sense. Even the smelling, yes, all of that is wonderful, but it's a really, really wonderful way to end a meal. And so I hope that we see people today between 2 and 4 when you're signing the books at the museum. That would be really great. And I guess
it's a great. As I said, it's a wonderful museum of Southern food and beverage. You've got a great library section of books about Southern food, including some of yours.
Yes.
Liz, tell us what have you like? Tell us about your books really quickly.
Oh, well, I've written a book that the book that was the One Book, One New Orleans book is probably the most general, the New Orleans of food biography, but also it was a new book is coming out, but that's not till March, all about my Sicilian heritage. So it's my first cookbook.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. All the other books are history and essays and whatever. So,
well, I think you described it when we talked about it, and it's about your Italian heritage, and it's and your Nonna, right? Your Nonnas?
Yes.
The Nonnas. Yeah. And I just think it's going to be you're a great writer, and it's going to be really entertaining I'm excited to read it and see it. So I think we are done
out of time. Yeah.
Done our hour.
Yes. It's been great talking to you. I've loved it.
Very great talking to you. And Megan.
We'll turn it back over to Megan. Yeah.
Megan.
Thank you guys so much. And Liz, hopefully next year we will be in person so that we can all sit down with a plate of pasta at a literature and lunch session.
Oh, yes.
Talk about your new book.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yes, totally.
Yes. Thank you so much. Don't forget to catch them at the Southern Food and Beverage Museum, which is 1504 Oretha Castle Haley, at 2:00 p.m. today. Sue will be signing books. I'm sure she'd love to sign one for you. So we're going to take a quick break. We're coming back on Zoom, not here on the live stream, at 10:30 for a workshop with Athena Dixon. That is one of our 2 festival events that are paid. So if you want a ticket because you've been meaning to sign up for that workshop, but you haven't yet, jump on our festival Eventbrite page real quick and get you a ticket. If you want to take a break during this next session, go ahead. We'll see you back here at 11:30 a.m. for midday music. We've got a performance by the legendary drummer Johnny Vidakovich, who's most known for his work with the Astral Project, among other things. We will see you soon, either in the workshop or on here at 11:30 with Johnny. Talk to you soon. Bye.